King David was what's called a shirish neshama. He was a neshama that everybody connected to. That's why all of humanity feels very connected to saying Tehillim. The whole of humanity feels like Tehillim is their song, is their language. So, as you said, Chassidim are like Sfardim, Ashkenazim. Likely he was a big chassid. I'm sure David HaMelech was very chassidic. Is that he was able to bring everything together. And Bezrat Hashem. Okay, so we were speaking about some of the preparations of the prophet. And the preparations of the prophet and this retreat that we'd like to do, where we would be experiencing meditations, pronouncing certain holy names, praising God, understanding certain intermingling of names in specific ways. But then we said that the main bottom line, if anybody wants to come on the retreat, they just have to say, with my whole heart, I'm committed to God. That's the end. All these fancy meditative stuff, it's all very nice and sweet and cute. But if a person's heart is in the wrong place, then it's not worth anything. It all has to be based on a very just authentic, Hashem, I just want to be close to you. I want to have a life of clinging to you, of bringing your presence into the world. With that very pure-hearted approach. Okay. So now we're going to talk about different levels of prophecy. Even after it's fully attained, prophecy still has different levels and degrees, both quantitatively and qualitatively. Quantitatively, some prophets may prophesize many times, while others may do so only once or twice in their entire career. So it could be a prophet who had a legit prophecy will be labeled as such a prophet, but he'll have one prophecy his entire life. Others will literally have prophecy all the time. Qualitatively, there's those who will attain a very close attachment to God and thus receive very great enlightenment, while the attachment of other prophets may be not as great and their enlightenment is correspondingly inferior. In one respect, however, all prophets are the same. They are all completely aware that their attachment is to God. The revelation that they experience is unambiguously recognized as coming from God without any doubt at all. It is only in a degree of attachment, revelation, and enlightenment that differences exist. So it's important. Person, even though yes, we want to achieve prophecy, but it's not like you get there and that's it. Once you touch that place, all you want is more. Which is really what Torah learning is all about. Torah learning, the more you learn, the hungrier you become. Things in the physical world don't work like that. Anybody here in finance? Yeah?
Kind of, yeah.
You know what the law of diminishing returns?
A little bit.
Which means, if I give you a Kit Kat bar. Zach, you know what the law of diminishing returns?
What?
The law of diminishing returns?
Something about like...
A Kit Kat bar? If I give you a Kit Kat bar and I say on a scale of 1 to 10, how good is it?
10, the first one at least.
Oh, what about the second one? What do you say?
Like a 9 maybe.
Third Kit Kat bar?
6.
Fourth Kit Kat bar? 2. Fifth Kit Kat bar? I hate Kit Kat bars.
Negative, yeah.
They're disgusting. I don't want to do a Kit Kat bar ever.
Find something that also contradicts that though.
Like what?
Money. You want 100, the Gemara says you want 100, 200, 200, 400.
Because money is unique. Money is unique. Money is just pure potential. You can't eat your money. Money is this interesting thing which is just crystallized potential. So really it's the excitement of what I can. But once you actually start engaging in it, how many steaks can you eat? How many cars could you drive? Eventually, you need something higher. You need something more. You need bigger toys. The law of diminishing returns means things will start not becoming as pleasant anymore, the more of it I have. That's the opposite in spirituality. The more spiritual experience you have, the more excited you are about it. The more Gemara you learn, you don't feel like, I'm kind of like sick and tired of this already. The more you really get into learning, you're like, I I'm so much hungrier now for Gemara. After 10 Kit Kat bars, you never want Kit Kat ever again. But the more Gemaras you learn, you are just on fire. So imagine prophecy. The more prophecy you get, the more insanely you want it. Part of a prophet's career may include being sent on a mission by God. This does not necessarily have to be the case. We mentioned this in the Rambam, but many prophets will be given a mission, something to say over based on a transmission, a communication that they should go and tell the people. This in itself, however, is not the essence of prophecy, since it is by no means necessary that a prophet be given a message for someone else. The prophetic experience is that the prophet is intimately connected with God, has a revelation of God himself, the master, creator, sustainer of heaven and earth. The intrinsic nature of prophecy is to be attached to God and experience his revelation. This in turn may also be accompanied by information and enlightenment. It's sometimes possible, however, that a prophet should be sent with a message to others. He may be a recognized prophet who is well versed and totally knowledgeable in the ways of prophecy. Nevertheless, one who is not so well versed and knowledgeable may also be given such a task. Because of this, it's important, it is possible for a prophet to be in error when he delivers his message. This is not the result of his prophecy itself, but a consequence in the manner in which on his own he carries it out. Meaning, he'll receive the prophetic message. Part of the message is you now have to go and do this extra mission. He may not be able to do that second part, even though the message is clear, which is fascinating, because a person can have such a crystal clear download of something which you would have said it's impossible that he won't carry out the mission. If something is so intellectually clear, why don't you do it?
Inconvenient.
I think the prophet sinks back into a reality that he's still in a world of five senses. Did you ever have a moment where you went to a class or a shiur and you were absolutely crystal clear about the purpose of life and you never want to get angry ever again? And then 5 minutes later, you go down and get a piece of schnitzel, and you can't help but elbow the guy, next to you. What happened to you? You were absolutely clear. You told yourself, I'm going to be like a malach. I'm going to be Mr. Peaceful. I'm never going to get upset. And then all of a sudden, that moment of and you were clear. You know that clarity. But something happens that you slip back into the world of the five senses, and it seems even the prophet could err in carrying it out. Interestingly, when this happens and a prophet does not fulfill his mission properly, he might also be punished. This is what happened in the case of Yeravin's prophet. He was punished for not abiding by his own prophecy explained by our sages. The reason for this is that he was not sufficiently careful in the ways of prophecy. It is also possible that the truth be revealed to a prophet and he not ascertain its full meaning, and this is the case of Yonah. In his prophecy, he was told, Nineveh will be overturned. This phrase, however, was subject to two possible interpretations. It could mean that the city would be overturned and destroyed because of its inhabitants' sins. On the other hand, it could also mean that they would be overturned from evil to good, as God indeed knew was the case. So when he understood the overturned, he misunderstood. Even though the message overturned was clear, but the prophet has still some job of integration of the message of the prophecy. One thing you start to see is that prophetic experiences are very, very complex, and they're not as simple as like, I saw the Lord. That is clear, is that every prophet knows this is from God. After that, though, there's more details that have to be worked out.
So how do we differentiate between a real true prophet who miscommunicated their prophecy versus a false prophet who, like we said before in a previous class, if someone were to come out with a prophecy about the future and they had some certain details wrong, then they're a false prophet. But what if they just miscommunicated the details and they had true prophecy? Like, how do we know how to differentiate real prophecy?
So here there was just an interpretation, and there could be a punishment for bad interpretation. The other would be a detail doesn't come true. Here, overturned was clear. He didn't claim anything that was not part of the prophecy. He misunderstood how overturned doesn't mean destroyed. It means from evil to good. Whereas the false prophet, he says something and it doesn't happen. He says something and it doesn't come true. If the phrase had only included the idea of punishment, then when God changed the decree and annulled the punishment, he would have revealed this fact to some prophet. The fact that a new decree had been issued would have been revealed to the prophets who were alive at the time, and especially to Yonah himself, since God had included both meanings in this phrase. However, it was not necessary to issue a new decree, but merely to fulfill the original decree according to its second meaning. Yonah, however, did not realize that this phrase had more than one interpretation, and thought of it only as a prediction of punishment. Our sages therefore say that it was Yonah who did not comprehend. He received the prophecy, but he misunderstood the application of the prophecy. Now look at this. It's also necessary to realize that there are two distinct aspects of prophecy, namely its content and its wording. It's content and wording. A prophetic concept may not be circumscribed by words, and in such a case the prophet will express it in any way he wishes. We're going to see this is one of the ways that we could discern who false prophets are. Because once the content comes into the koyach hadimoyan, into that space, that apparatus that Hashem put in our minds, that allows us to experience the maybe DMT experience through the prophecy, that imaging, that experience, if it's just content without words, then it's up to the prophet to take that experience and now translate it through his soul and give, through his personality, a wording to that prophecy. And that's going to be significant because no two people are alike, and therefore the actual wording will be different depending on who the person is.
It's like Pharaoh and Yosef, no? Kind of like Pharaoh prophesied something and Yosef put it into words.
He's saying Pharaoh's dreams.
Yeah.
Is that there'll be but he was describing things. He said words. Yosef was interpreting. He was the Balach Haloimus. He can interpret what the messages of the dreams were. But Pharaoh was still using words. This would be just like a revelation without words. And then the prophet takes the revelation and almost poetically puts it in his language. That's why it's very fascinating. And people who have a keen eye, they could tell if somebody sent you a letter using ChatGPT. It's like pashut. You could hear it's not the style of the person. It's like almost immediately recognizable. Somebody puts together a business plan, so you send it to a person. So the person's like, okay, fascinating. I see you got some help with, Mr. ChatGPT here. So how did you know? I tweaked it, it wasn't all him. It's so obvious because the style of the person, the soul of the person has a flavor of how they speak and their words. And that's something from the communication of the content to the languaging of the person. So I'd be very careful of sending important letters through ChatGPT because you'll get caught. I mean, Don't write, your anniversary letter and say, ChatGPT. Okay, it's my 10th anniversary. Please write me like an exceptionally romantic, but using my language, you know what I'm saying? I don't want to get caught, ChatGPT. Okay, so you know that. And like speak like I would speak and, done. And then what pops out is the following, and be careful. Your wife can tell. A friend can tell. You're going to say something?
I just wanted to say that's why I think in Inner Space it says Rabbi Kaplan says that the probably from here that the prophets, when they went to their schools to learn this stuff, they actually had to they not anybody could be a prophet, partly because they needed to have a creative mind. They needed to be able to take that whatever they saw and piece it together into something and be able to put it into words.
Yes.
And many people are incapable of like just taking what they see and putting it into words. So they needed to actually study this stuff in school.
That's very beautiful. I would even suggest, based on that, it's a lost art. But I would suggest something very healthy for really everybody, is that all of us should journal. All of us should journal. That to write your thoughts down, like in a really free-flowing form. By the way, it's very therapeutic. Just to journal your thoughts. Because oftentimes there's a lot going on inside of us, but we don't know how to translate that into something more concrete. And when you just let your pen kind of flow on the page, it's very therapeutic, and it teaches us how to almost make sense of our inner world and give some direction to it. That would be like a modern day application of building those creative juices.
Do you think speaking is the same thing?
I think speaking is...
Even to yourself, like people do.
Yeah, for sure, it's better to, for sure.
Because I like to speak with ChatGPT, just like talking to it. And it talks back, and it's just like have a conversation. Like, oh, this is what happened, this is what happened, this is what happened. Like random times, whenever there's like nobody to talk around you. Sometimes it's like a fun thing to do.
No, it's a fascinating thing, because you're encountering, the way the Rosh Hashiva says it, they mastered the nefesh. The nefesh of basically humanity was conquered through ChatGPT. They basically took the nefesh of, which is really like the human pulse, like the basic pulse of what people are like talking about. They can't touch the ruach, they can't touch the neshama, forget about it. They're going to try to conquer the ruach and the neshama. But the nefesh they got. But when you speak and when you write, there's more than just a nefesh there. There's neshama there. And even though they're trying to pull on it, you could tell that it's not, you could tell it's artificial. If you ask ChatGPT to make you some artwork, you could tell it's just not it. It's like artificial, which is fascinating. And I think the difference between hitzboidus and speaking things out and also writing, in a certain way you speak it out, so you don't see it later on. When you write something and then you take a look at it, it's a very sobering thing to see like, how am I really expressing myself? When you speak, that's like a level of expression, but it's not concretized. When you're writing, I have to choose this word. This is the word. And it's true when you speak, you're choosing this word as opposed to that word. There is an element of din, of chopping up and choosing what to say, what not to say. But when it comes into writing, it's very exacting. It's very precision-based. And it makes you think, like, how do I want to express the idea more precisely? Because you take a look, is that really how I'm feeling? Like you spend more time with it, you refine it more. Whereas when you speak, you're not thinking like, did I say it in the best? No, let me try. You're just talking. You could do that through speech. Try again. Let me say it again, Hashem. I feel this feeling right now using these words. And they said, no, it's probably a better way to say it. So you could do that, but when you write it, it's very condensed energy. Yeah.
So how do you find the middle ground between doing that, going making sure that you're really thinking about putting the right words down versus when you might be taking too long trying to think of what the right words should be?
So I think generally we should err on the side of spending more time before we think as opposed to less time. I think generally we don't spend very much time at all, generally. And we just, I remember the first time I learned, I think it was in middle school, and there was a very intelligent guy. He was a classmate of mine. His name was Ori. And I just remember that everything that came out of his mouth was actually super intelligent. And I remember asking him one time, I said, like, Ori, like, how do you always say such smart things? And he went on to become like a big person in law school, and then I'm not even sure what he's up to today, but I know he was always making big moves. And I said, like, how do you always say like the smartest things? He said, this might come as a surprise, but I think before I talk. I was like, wow. Never thought about that before.
Obviously.
I'll tell you the truth. I never thought about that. Now it's true. Sometimes you would ask him something, he would stand there for like a second, like, and then he would say something. But that moment of him thinking was actually very important. And he said, in the beginning, it took me like a few moments to think before I said something, and people were like, no, like say something. But then it became more natural, and my thought before I would speak became like nanoseconds of thought, and that even as I'm speaking, I'm thinking forward in my conversation. I can already think the words 20 words down the line as I'm speaking them right now. So he said in the beginning, it's true, it takes us some time. It's a muscle, it's called thinking. And I was like, that's so profound. I said, thank you so much. So I think generally it's better to spend more time thinking before speaking. Go on that side. Even though you might think people are going to be impatient and they say something already, buddy. Better to say something intelligent than to be quick to speak and just say something foolish. And we learn that, as our great sages, the Jewish masters in Pirkei Avos taught us, that one of the greatest ways to become a man of wisdom is actually to learn the traits of silence and to learn how to not speak and think and develop intelligent ideas in my mind that I can develop them and then present them in an intelligent way. I remember there was something else that changed me very, very much, was that I had a Rabbi here, Nesha Torah, who said something very profound. He said, you should know, when you want to say something in a group setting, let's just talk about the lumdus of what's about to happen. When you're about to say something in a group setting, essentially what you're saying is that what I'm about to say is so mega important that every single person should stop what they're doing and focus on the content of my words. And therefore, what I'm essentially doing when I speak up in a group setting is to make everybody stop what they're doing. I better make sure that I have something really intelligent to say. Otherwise, I'm really forcing my hand to pull everybody's attention towards me. And therefore, generally, maybe I should be more silent, think about, am what I'm saying, is that going to be of benefit to people? And then build from that place. So that's what the sages say, is that it's generally good to be more silent, take things in, and then when you feel you really have something of content, to then express it. It's interesting, it says that a person doesn't really understand his Rebbe's words for 40 years.
How do you remember them after 40 years?
Because for 40 years you've been thinking about them, and you've been processing them. And then after 40 years you start, my Rebbe here of Yule, so we've been connected almost 20 years, and I'm just beginning to understand certain things that he's told me over the years. But I'm still only halfway. I'm still, just in the beginning. And then you start to understand them. So we really see thoughts and ideas in a long-term, mature way. Even though the world so much is about just say something, just be yourself, just express yourself. Well, who is that self? Is that self just some regurgitation of whatever social media is saying? Or have I been silent enough to find a self that now when I do say something, I'm actually saying the me? So that's a very important lesson, is to think about that. And definitely the prophet is going through this process of experiencing at this phase and then transmitting it into a languaging. And I would suggest in review today that if people could start to journal, that will definitely be in the spirit of this idea of, I want to take experiences that I'm having and start to put a language to it. If you're more musical, then sing a song. Sing your life into a song, or write a poem, or if you're an artist, draw something. Draw a picture of your day. Draw a picture of, this is how I'm feeling today. This was my day in visual form. Get a canvas, like some paints late at night in the Moshe, start throwing, whatever, whatever you feel will, but put something from the world of cerebralness into something more concrete. And languaging, I would say, is a very good thing to use, because that's the human experience, even though art is very important to us, but language is really what distinguishes us from all the other animals, that we have articulate language. And therefore, may we be Zoich HaMamish to continue to grow in the ways of the prophets. We're going to be finishing this section on prophecy, going into false prophets, then seeing Moshe as a prophet, and then continuing with the authenticity of Torah. Have a wonderful day, my dear friends.
Chizzuk.
Chazak Baruch.